Maintaining peace was a critical issue for medieval rulers, as they often couldn't rely on a sufficient number of officials who could effectively carry out police tasks in all the lands they ruled. It is true that rulers continued to enact laws to regulate the provision of local justice, and also that the church took measures to limit violence, for instance, through the movement of the peace of God. Peacekeeping, however, had to rely to a considerable extent on the active role of communities in maintaining security and order, and also on the joint responsibility between individuals of the same community. Whether such involvement of communities was an imposition from above or the expression of the agency of communities and local elites is a debated matter, but what is certain is that communities had a voice in setting customs and that they fulfilled relevant peacekeeping duties.
Yes. For instance, in France, the Coutume de Normandie describes the practice of the clameur de haro, the haro claim. It was a public clamor and a verbal complaint made by the victim of an offense, who thereby sought the protection of the king and or started formally legal proceedings. So this practice involving community was a way to bring criminals before royal courts. There was also the English parallel of the hue and cry that may have come later than in France, which raises the hypothesis that William first brought it from Normandy. Again, people who discovered or witnessed an offense had the duty to raise the hue and cry in order to inform officials and the community, who had then the duty to chase the suspect, and failure to raise the hue and cry could result in the amercement of the injured, which occurred quite frequently in the record. In England, wider and routine police practices could be dated back to Anglo-Saxon times. Indeed, because Anglo-Saxon structures of kinship were crumbling, other forms of solidarity had to be found. Thus, Anglo-Saxon communities maintained law and order through suretyship systems. For instance, they were associated in tithings, which gradually developed in the wider system of franklage. Franklage was a peacekeeping system based on joint suretyship, common in most English counties and widespread from Anglo-Saxon times to the 14th century. It was actually designed to prevent crime in local community, and under that system of policing, each man over 12 years old, except clergy, member of the household of a lord, and the richer freemen, was required to be part of a group of 10 called tithing, and each member stands surety for any of the members of the tithing. They shared the joint responsibility to produce any man of the tithing suspected of crime before the royal official, and if the member of the tithing failed to appear, they were collectively fined.
This is very interesting because in Italy we have a quite different institutional situation, institutional setting. Here, local justice, including peacekeeping and police tasks, fell under responsibility of the Comune Rurale. It's an institution. It's, let's say, an institutionalized form of local government based on elective and rotating offices. And this institution was often developed under a close control of either the lords, local elites, or the city commune, this is the Italian city-state. The duties of the Comune Rurale in the provision of justice were limited to low justice. They could not judge high justice. They had no voice in that. And this is attested by several statutes enacted by the city communes. The same statutes, however, compelled communities to inform municipal officials of any crime committed in the village. When villagers failed to report such crimes to central authorities, that is, to municipal officials, the entire community was held responsible and had to pay a fine any fine or compensation due to that linked to that crime. In terms of peacekeeping, the Comune Rurale and its officials had two main functions thus. Firstly, to ensure the payment of the debts gathered by the community for unreported crimes. In the second place, they also had to assure that these crimes were regularly reported to the municipal officials to prevent crime in this sense. So the joint responsibility of the community was institutionalized in quite a different way from what we have seen in the case of English franc plates and euros. And so this brings us back to the extent to what English communities related to central government.
Yes, even if increasingly there were officials performing peacekeeping duties, sheriff and constable for instance, they still needed community to get involved, as shown by the posse comitatus, which was the legal power of sheriff or of an official to summon armed citizens to aid in keeping the peace. And this practice could be traced back at least as far as the reign of Alfred the Great. So English medieval communities got involved in local governance through other different ways, such as office holding and law enforcement. They also performed important judicial duties through the function of jurors, either jurors of presentment or trial jurors. So this task fell into the hands of community, usually upon the request of superior authorities, often royal power. The benefit was bilateral. Central government could exercise its authority in local communities despite its lack of officials, and in a certain extent, communities have a way to act on their own governance. So, community involvement in law and order led upon different factors: communal sense of responsibility, which is linked to honor, the ability of the group to put pressure on the individual, monetary rewards, and threats of amusement.
So, just to conclude, so communal peacekeeping was crucial in Western European legal systems, we might say, and it can be seen as one of their common features. Its forms, however, seem to have varied from region to region according to different elements. I might mention governmental and institutional settings, the agency of communities, but also the degree of centralization of these legal systems.